First arrive there, dude. James. Oh, yes. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
I got an email about 6:10 my time. Erik is waiting in your personal Zoom room. I'm like, what? I guess he got the time. I guess, is he in Minnesota? Or is he back?
No, he's back.
Okay, so he pulled a Len Kafka. He's confused. I imagine. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good to hear.
Trying to figure out where this something on my glasses. This anti-blue correction thing on my glasses.
It makes it purple. It's kind of cool, actually.
That's weird. It's distracting.
That'll be all right. Let's get through the ads here. Just getting through getting all the shout outs and announcements out, and we're good here. Just have a nice crowd. This will finish up this week, and we had a nice night last night with a Greyhawk game with that Greenwood playing. It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a little, it's always out there. It was great. Really excited. We've never discussed this adventure path really at all, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we really haven't gotten into. I know we talked about it a little bit when we had you on a while back, but we haven't really gotten into the depths on it. So
yeah. I was looking for my copies, but I got them stuffed in a box somewhere.
That's okay. I got some here. I have some dungeons. I found my Sasserine map. So
nice.
Yeah, we're good. I got a lot of stuff. I got it all in PDF too. We'll bring it up. So yeah, very, very cool. So good. What's up, Mike? Butter Tough. Good to see you all. All right, we'll have a fun one here finishing up this week. And I got 2 streams next week, and I'm on vacation going to Florida.
What? Vacation?
Yeah. Family vacation down in south of St. Augustine. Yeah, we got a little house down there. We're going to chill out for a week.
That's where they found the lobster.
Hey, I don't know if you heard the news, but like a major intersection blew up in Philly off I-95. It's all over in the news now, and it's yeah, it's like, oh my god, because I usually use that word like almost every day. Going out into my sales territory would be awful. You hate it when I start early, Gary Julian? Well, sorry, but they're both here, and these are just ads, Gary. Gary is here to instigate, I think, tonight.
Troublemaker.
The troublemaker that he is. That would be a good discussion. Guess I'd better pull up my guess. It's here, too. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Lord Games, join the fray.
What's Superior doing there? Start getting some shout-outs. I'll set the good. Cool. You are the Paizo Soul Eater, Gary? What? I'm interested to hear a lot of the how's whys and yeah, it's be good. We're doing at least one $25 gift certificate to Troller Games tonight, so I'm setting it up now so don't forget. There you go. It's in chat. Yeah, I thought Eric's got a lot of books. Picture.
He's got a couple, that's for sure.
Gosh. I think I have any more of those. Alright, one more. Almost there. Oh my God, yeah. And I look, I think that like I'd love people to utilize all the data that's in here. I got some questions, you know, Gary. We'll get to all some really good. Stuff. Hey! Did you pull Leonard Lakofko on me earlier, Eric, and get the time wrong?
No, I've been having technological apocalypse.
Oh, all right. Well, that's good to know.
Right, good to know, right? You know,
you're not losing.
Grab something for Danica. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, you're fine, man. You're fine. We're still in ads. Oh, I'm glad he checked it. I was like,
I got him on the. I was just chatting with him earlier. Paraphernalia.
Yeah. Look, Gary, you're on, and we're going to get a start a couple minutes early and just take advantage of it. It's like not a lot of other channels are on. Blue Box is on vacation. Yeah, there's not much. Robert Hartley's not on. There's not. This is like a shutdown hiatus mode in summer going on right now. Anna's in Sweden. This will be the last Gavin for 2 weeks. Won't be back on the 25th till the 25th of this next Sunday. If I were to stream while I was on vacation, my wife would throw me out into the Atlantic Ocean.
Better than the Pacific Ocean is smaller.
Well, just from where we are, so. Alright. Coming live in a minute here. Hopefully everyone's excited about the discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Look at that. We're early. Everyone's going to be like, you guys are on too early. I'm like, oh, too bad. Early's good.
Early is good.
Yeah. Hey, Curtis. Sam. I already got the giveaway going. It's at least a 25-hour gift certificate to Troller Games, one of our sponsors. If you can get a sort of hype, I'll add some points. But, that'll be a good start. Let's come live here. Let's come live. We're like 6 minutes early, but who cares? Whoops! There we go. I got to go like that, and boom, and then fix one thing. So, good evening, everyone. What a week this has been. Had a crazy game last night with Ed Greenwood and the Slav Squat Squad girls in a crossover event. You all know how that went. debaucherous. Yeah, as Eric knows, as he's played with some of them, and tonight. So we're going to discuss the Savage Tide. So actually, James Jacobs is our guest. Let's welcome him as our special guest. Eric is going to co-host with me and take Anna's place tonight. Yes.
Oh my God! The crown of responsibility weighs heavily upon my troubled brow.
But I know you'll be part of the discussion too. Yeah, Anna's in Sweden, and it's just such a time difference there. So she's visiting family and friends, and for an entire month. So, but what a great topic tonight. I was just saying to James before you came on, Eric, this is something like we've only ever touched like the fringes of, never really going into discussion on this great adventure path.
Yeah.
So first
There's
off,
much to discuss.
But first off, let's please introduce both of yourselves. James, please tell the audience. There may be some people out there who don't know who you are.
Oh, well, I'm James Jacobs. I was the lead developer architect of Savage Tide back in the day. I'm the narrative creative director at Paizo, so I do all the adventure stuff and adventure paths down a little bit. Kind of just have my fingers Machiavellian style manipulating things behind the scenes all over the place at Paizo.
Very cool. And we'll get a little background on how Savage Tide came about shortly. I'm sure. Welcome here and welcome back, because we've had you on. We had you on like in the 100s. We're at 252 now. Like, where's the time?
Wow.
Going? Oh yeah. I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I just had my 1,000th game. My 1,000th adventure was last Saturday that we streamed. So yeah, it's just in 43 years. It's insane.
Well done.
Thanks. I'm getting freaking old, man. So
Hey.
Next gentleman doesn't need any. We're all getting there. Eric doesn't need an introduction. He's been on the channel multiple times, the legendary Venarium Vord, and plus on a lot of discussions. Hopefully we'll have him back for virtual Greyhawk Cons. There's the Experts every year, which is coming up October 6th through the 8th. Eric Martin. Eric, welcome back.
Hello, Jay. Welcome to. I'm happy to be welcome back in an enhanced capacity as semi-professional status here as the co-host. So that's very exciting.
As the
very exciting.
It is exciting because you're going to know questions that I won't even know to ask. You'll be like, I know something you don't know. And this will be great about this. So I am one thing. How's the house hunting going?
Stay tuned.
Good.
I'm looking for a home. As you can see, there's too much stuff for my Leoman's tiny hut, and I need a magnificent mansion to accommodate all.
You do, man.
Vibrams and tomes, yes. So the hunt continues.
Yes. Well, you'll find something and then make it make it the dream house.
Of that I am certain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, best of luck to you on that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, how does we have Cauldron first, right? Shackled City. Then you have Age of Worms second, and I know we can talk about this, Eric. If this is the right question, you're on the clock now. You have a time limit, right? Paizo.
Yes.
So, James, how did this all come about? Saying this is the one we're going to do. This is our third and final adventure path we're going to do.
Well, when we started working on it, it was our third adventure path, and that was it. We didn't know that we were doing a final adventure path for Dungeon. We knew coming out of Age of Worms that people tended to a lot of people bought the issues of Dungeon that had adventure paths, because that's the whole point, is you want to chase the entire campaign from start to finish. And we'd heard, I think, from Shackled City that people were like, oh yeah, I love the magazine, but I only get the adventure path volumes or something like that. So we started pushing to have them in every single volume. At one point, I think we were talking about like going directly from the end of Age of Worms directly into Savage Tide, but that was a bit, I guess, ambitious is a good word for it. But we knew going in that we wanted to do another adventure path just back to back to back, every volume all the way from first to 20th level. And the idea of going back to Sasserine, and which you never really visited in Shackled City, but we heard about it and all that. The idea of going back there was always at the top of my mind. And So I wanted to that sort of was a brand new to dungeon do the game itself, Greyhawk, Dungeons and Dragons, and everything, and it had never been really explored, and I wanted that to be kind of the starting point for this entire thing. And we wanted it to pull in all sorts of different stuff and elements, not just from different volumes of Dungeon Magazine and different places in Greyhawk, but different places throughout D&D and all of that. Multiple different editions, The Isle of Dread is a big key player in here as well, and that's until this point was not officially part of Greyhawk. And part of the reason for that was just this idea that when you build a campaign, you can absolutely pull from different campaign settings and worlds and stories and patch everything together in a really fun way. And I guess this was sort of a stealthy way for us to show the world that, because we'd also heard a lot of people like, well, I love two of the adventures in there, but the third one's in the Forgotten Realms, and I only want Greyhawk adventures or something like that. And it's like, no, it's pretty similar worlds. You can pick and plug and play, and you don't really have to ignore stuff that isn't in your favorite setting. But obviously, Erik and I do have a favorite setting, and it's when we were working on Dungeon Magazine, and so we wanted Greyhawk to be kind of the ground zero of this and start pulling things in, like drawing them through portals and filling out the setting. And so it was like not quite 20 years ago.
I know.
Pretty close.
Oh God.
So just looking back at it all, it's like I remember some of the details. I knew, for example, that like we want to get concept art. So we had like contacts with Ben Wooten and Warren Mayhew, who were at the time doing a lot of stuff with I think they were working on King Kong at the same time. They were working
King
on
Kong.
Yeah. So that was kind of wild that we got like the concept artists that were working on Peter Jackson's King Kong to do kind of the same stuff thematically that we were doing in Dungeon Magazine. And there's that. Yeah, that's right. Who's the new guy?
Yeah, so that's what I want. Yeah, I saw this. I'm like, so you're the new big fish. Are you the editor at this point? Erik has got other things going on. You were taking over Dungeon as far as it started on 139.
Yeah, that was the first our first issue where I was the editor-in-chief of Dungeon.
Okay.
And Sean Glenn was like, well, you're talking about like the 80s and all of this stuff. I want to get the special Miami Vice themed DeLorean image of you for this editorial. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're Sean Glenn, so I'm sure it'll be awesome. And there it is. So
that's excellent.
But,
James had been the managing editor on Dungeon almost my entire run. So it started probably about 107, 108, somewhere in there, I would imagine. And this was when I stepped back. I was still editing Dragon, but I was focusing more on being the publisher of Paizo. And for a while, I tried to wear all three of those hats, and even any one of those hats is more than enough. And so I needed to step away. And honestly, I think editing Dungeon is the most fun job in the entire industry. I think when I took over for Chris Thomason, it was Chris Perkins who said that that's the best job you'll ever have. And in many ways, I think he was right. And so keeping it while also being editor of Dragon because of staffing changes at Paizo or whatever, worked for a few months just to kind of keep continuity and just make sure that we had enough change going on at that point in the company that we didn't want to overwhelm it. But at a certain point, it was just like, James is doing a lot of the work. I can't do it anymore. James deserves to be editor-in-chief of Dungeon. So and this is where he came in, and he got a good year's worth of Adventure Path before, unfortunately, it had to come to an end. But I'm very happy that he got an opportunity to sit in the big chair, so to speak.
Yeah, it's definitely a high point, being able to run the ship.
This article you wrote, this little discussion you wrote, we have a lot in common when it says here, I remember my dad's halfling thief getting fed up with my sister's human fighter, picking on his size and pushing her down a well. And it's one of my favorite adventures of all time, Citadel by the Sea.
Yeah.
Right. And Dragon 78, it's just like, so we got a lot of similar memories, and that's really cool. That, you come from the same background. We all grew up in that era, in that late 70s, early 80s, and 90s as fans, And you guys both... Good, Erik. Yeah.
James, how old were you when you were first published in Dungeon Magazine?
14, I believe.
That's so great.
There's obviously, but the time from when you send in the first letter of like, hey, I want to do this. I'm a barely in high school kid, to the point where it's actually published. It was about a year or so like that. So I can't remember if it was 14 that it was published or 14 that I started writing it or what, but it was early high school.
I think that there was, James had a stack of credits as a contributor to Dungeon prior to joining the staff. And I think that if, in the history of the magazine, it was only probably, Wolfgang Bauer, I guess, who maybe was one of the first editors of Dungeon who had read Dungeon as a fan. Prior to that,
Mm-hmm.
I think Roger Moore was the original editor, and then Barbara Young was the editor for most of the, late first and second edition run, as I recall, and early second edition run. And prior to that, and so James here is a guy who'd been living with the magazine since he was like 12 years old. I think you were one of the charter subscribers to the magazine. So when I handed the keys to James, it wasn't just handing the keys to someone who I'd worked with for 30 issues or whatever and knew would do it as a professional, but was also sort of like, wow, this is like the kid who pulled the sword from the Sorcerer's Stone. He was built to be the editor-in-chief of Dungeon magazine. I don't think anyone in the history of the magazine had the kind of training, both as a reader and as a contributor, and then as an editor too. I think it's no question in my mind that James Jacobs is the most qualified editor-in-chief of Dungeon magazine that ever there were. So
thanks. I don't
nice
know
to be able to
about
hand
that,
it off
but,
in those circumstances. It's going to be in safe hands, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fantastic.
It was definitely. I think the first day I came into Paizo, we were just shipping 103.
Okay.
Volume 103. I think that was the one that the third Shackled City Adventure Path, and it was kind of an exciting day to start working there. It was like almost 20 years ago to the day. On my 20th anniversary is in like 3 weeks. The Paizo, so that's kind of unreal. But everybody was in a panic because I guess the cover artist had delivered the cover for this volume like just a day or two before it was supposed to go to the printer and to the to get approved. It was the coast and all of that. And I don't know if it was a even a completed painting or what, but there's a lot of, just looking back at it now, since the magazines were on such a super tight schedule, month by month by month, we were often just kind of down to the wire when we were getting resources and ready to go. But we managed to handle it. And looking back on it now, just it sort of feels weirdly lackadaisical, because a magazine is so intense, but it's really 3 weeks of intensity and then 1 week of kind of like just you get a week to catch up. And that's a luxury we haven't had since we moved on to do Pathfinder, because we're doing just so much more stuff.
Isn't it funny, James, to think back, 15, 20 years, the beginning of Paizo? I remember coming home during the magazine days and just saying, oh my God, I'm so busy. I've never been this busy in my life. How could I possibly get this all done?
Mm-hmm.
And now I look back and I'm just like, bro, you had no idea.
Longing for those
evolution
days.
For sure. Yeah.
So we get to 139, but let's step back beyond that. Before that, is this your own personal campaign?
Not really.
Okay.
I didn't start doing that until I started doing the Pathfinder Adventure Pass, and that was sort of a case of like, well, we have to hit the ground running, so I can look back on some campaigns I ran back in the day in college or whatever, and save time in creating them. But with this one, the whole idea of like bringing different parts of different settings together into one sort of cohesive whole was something that I'd been doing all the time. But this one was more of a case of, well, I'm the one in charge. I get to build this whole outline and figure out what we're going to do. And it was less about showing off, bringing in a campaign that I'd ran, and I wanted to do something brand new for, bring in a lot of different authors working on it. but I want to do, my favorite stuff. So dinosaurs and demons and all of the things that start with D are in this adventure path, basically.
There's some people whose head exploded. The anti-dinosaur crowd out there, like the John at Blue Box. He's like, no dinosaurs in Greyhawk. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up just deep in the dinosaur world, and that was just something I loved growing up. And I never really understood this pushback against dinosaurs in fantasy games and all that. And I get it that they're kind of off model when it comes to dragons and all of that. But if we've got a world where it's like we got wolves and lions and minotaurs and manticores living in the same spot, why not? I mean, it's a place where you can play with your favorite creatures, and dinosaurs have always been that for me. And so it's I mean, when I picked up the first monster manual way back in the day and was looking through it, there's like pages of dinosaurs in there. And that was one of the first things, like, there's dinosaurs in this game? I am intrigued.
Yeah, it's interesting. If there's no dinosaurs in Greyhawk, maybe we can go through Monster Manual 2, and Fiend Folio, and just cross out all the other official AD&D monsters that there aren't in the official AD&D campaign setting.
Yeah.
I always assumed that everything in those books was in Greyhawk, and still do.
Yeah, I don't know of any single monster, not the Fiend Folio, but the original Monster Manual, that is not a Greyhawk monster.
There's a couple in there that one of the weird things about that whole era is that if you had a picture in that monster manual of your monster, that thing got used. But if there was no picture for the monster, people didn't really attach to it.
So
and
true. 100%.
So that's why one of the things I wanted to do in this one was bring Mashers into the game. Masher was this giant spiny sea worm in the monster manual, and it had no art. And I wanted to make sure that we had Mashers in this adventure somewhere.
I meant to tell you, James, I can't remember where it was. And so, there's a small chance it was a dream. But I'm sure it wasn't.
Like your Osquip familiar.
Yes, it was somebody like one of the OG artists. I think it was maybe in those cards, remember the little flash cards and Monster Flash? Anyway, somebody like Errol Otis or somebody drew a Masher back in the day. There is a Masher.
That's not a dream.
Contemporary illustration. Okay, that's real.
Yeah. Because I remember you found it at one point and you showed it to me.
Oh, and happy day.
I think it was one of those flashcards, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So one of the few, James and I talked about there being no illustration of the Masher numerous times, because I think that's what they call a proud nail. Why was there no illustration of the Masher? But apparently a Masher illustration does exist. So everything is right in the universe.
Were all of those trading card things in color, or were there some black? Because my proto memory is that this Masher was a black and white line drawing. So
I don't even know anymore. I don't even know.
It's a little weird looking. So looking back on it now, what I know today, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they decided not to run it because it just looked off. It looks strange. But there's a lot of goofy things in that book.
Do you remember what the Thought Eater looks like? I'm pretty sure Strange was not grounds for not having one.
But there are some really big named monsters that don't have pictures, like Ghasts don't have pictures. Ghouls do, but Ghasts don't in the original Monster Manual.
Yeah.
But there they get overlooked. There's a lot of them. So last night...
Ghasts are lucky, though, because they're kind of tougher ghouls. So they're on the same page, and you can sort of fake it.
Last night against Ed, I used 2 Syphils.
Colonial insectoid form artificial life?
Yes, I did.
Were you sure to use the full acronym Colonial insect form artificial life?
So I had Eric Boyd playing in the group, and he immediately said it. He goes, Colonial insect form artificial life.
Good, because that's critical. It's not just called the CFOL. It's an acronym.
Yeah, so I used 2 last night. I try and do that all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. But that's
don't those?
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't those have a super complicated, weird, unusual way to kill them?
Yeah, because 16 points and I made it 24. I upped them a bit. Thanks, Patrick. I upped them a bit, but we have a half-orc female 7th level who has a +2 Great Mace, and Blunt does full damage on him, and she getting 2 attacks per round, being specialized.
Right.
Yeah. So, but and of course Ed's throwing spells around like crazy. as being a Greyhawk mage. So, but I got to use a spell against Ed from that he made, which was awesome. And
that's always good.
Yeah, and that was from Acid Bolt from the Drow the Underdark.
Nice.
So Many Jaws, all those. Yeah, that's the great thing, and that's cool. So I noticed when you said that crossovers, this is what really captures my mind. And even in the first one, I'm going to ask you a question about that shortly. You use characters that are in Age of Worms that go into expeditions. I think you use a character in this Savage Tide. Is Lavinia? Does she start off as a baddie and then go and turns into a demon later? Because she's in Expeditions Ruins of Greyhawk, isn't she? Or is that just the same name?
I think it's a similar name.
Oh, it's not the same person. Okay.
Yeah, I think the Liraveth or something like that was the Expedition.
The demon that's running around with Eagle's clone.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, it's not the same person then, because I noticed that and I was like, man, that is genius if you guys are doing that. Yeah. So if we got
there was some of that. We had what's his name? The dude running. Yeah.
Let me show you Lavinia. It's not the same. She's not to turn into a demon or something like that at the end. This is the very first beginning of the adventure.
Or maybe, like I said, this was like 18 years ago.
I know.
Some of our Easter eggs are like surprises to us now, which makes them extra cool.
That's right.
We're like we're bound to really appreciate them. Like, wow, what a great idea! Yeah. Oh yeah, it was your idea, James. Oh right.
Yeah.
Lavinia is a Vander Bowen. She's a Vander Bowen who's a cousin appearance in Shackled City that Samwise says. I thought that she was the same evil demon that was running around, and I was like, oh wow, but I guess maybe not. Maybe it's the same name. Or it's close.
She might have been. I mean, you're naming so many characters when you're doing this every single month, and a lot of them are coming from the writers that you hire. But in something like an adventure path, we have to build this entire outline for it, and we have to come up with the names because we want to make sure that they have parity between all the different volumes and all the different writers. And when you're making up that many names, there's going to be duplicates, and every single person has their own sort of like weird proto name blob in their brain that they pull on, and you do it enough, you can start recognizing. Like I can recognize a name that Erik has invented. Like looking through that big Absalom book, that's an Erik name. That's an Erik name. That's an Erik name.
Very cool.
Yeah. I have a quick question, Jay. So James, I remember when we were doing Age of Worms, one of the things that we looked at was try as we might. Okay, so backing up a little bit, one of the early meetings that James was in within a few months, I think, of him joining the staff was when we started getting manuscripts for the Shackled City adventure path. It was very clear that there was really not an outline for the campaign. It was pretty much just like read the one that came before, riff on it with your own thing, and then hand it to the next person. And I've often equated it to that writing exercise called the exquisite corpse, where you write 2 lines of a poem, you fold over the top line, you pass it on, and then the person riffs off of that second line, and it kind of becomes a thing of its own, right? But the challenge with the plan that James mentioned, which started with Age of Worms, which is we're going to go monthly with these adventure paths, is even if we wanted to have such a loosey-goosey kind of way of putting together a campaign, which we didn't, the monthly deadlines were not going to allow for that kind of read the previous manuscript, come up with your idea, write your thing, and so on. So we knew we had to tighten that up. And so one of the things that we did was we pulled in most of the writers for Shackled City were either working at Wizards or at Paizo at the time, and so it was very easy to gather everybody into a room, and we just kind of kicked together like an outline for Shackled City, really for the first time, and thus you start seeing some of the plot things weaving together more on the back half of Shackled City. But even when we finished Shackled City, I remember, James, there were a handful of sort of dangling plot threads or things that were brought up in Shackled City, but that we never really got to in a meaningful way. And the 2 that stick out to me was there was a celestial character called Celeste who appeared in Shackled City and then later appeared in Age of Worms, and there was the Cult of the Ebon Triad, which was referenced in Shackled City, but not really delved into. And then we made that one of the major villainous forces in the Age of Worms campaign. Do you recall when you were sitting down, or when we were sitting down, to think about what we wanted to do with Savage Tide? Were there other things that maybe were, I don't want to call them plot holes, but dangling elements from either of the first two adventure paths that you remember kind of putting on the wish list as this is something I really want to get to in Savage Tide?
Yeah, the big one that comes to mind is Sasserine, which has been mentioned in Cauldron. It's like, this is the big city that you go to if you need to go buy something really expensive, or you want to expand your campaign out to. But you never go to Sasserine in Shackled City, and it wasn't located anywhere. It's just like kind of out there, maybe on the coast, and so I wanted to basically use Sasserine as like a ground zero to connect all of these things together.
So it did not exist. Here's the map. It did not exist here until this was done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really exists. Cauldron itself was just nothing. It was just like a random town. But the problem with Paizo's take on Dragon and Dungeon is, we just knew too much about Greyhawk and cared too much about Greyhawk to buy, the idea of it's like, oh, this is the default setting for 3rd edition. So we kind of got to like have our cake and eat it too, where we could just be like, no, it's like, yeah, we could pull in the Isle of Dread because who cares? It's just the default setting, y'all. But really, we're like, oh, and then let's pull in this thing from a Polyhedron article, and this was in the Gord books or whatever. I mean, we were nerds. Yeah. And so
yeah, I like that.
So the idea of bringing the Isle of Dread into the default setting at Greyhawk really started with like Dungeon 114, I think, as Gary Holian mentioned. He was heavily involved in that. And so by the time we got to Savage Tide, it was like, well, the only place where Cauldron would fit, temporally or climate wise, was down, south of the Hold of the Sea Princes. And the only place where then Sasserine could be is like when they invented Sasserine and threw that name in with the first couple issues of Shackled City, it was not like, oh, let's put a big city in a previously undiscovered or unmapped part of the Flennis. It was just basically that's what made sense. And so almost like by default, Greyhawk got another city. And I think it wasn't until Savage Tide, when we had the opportunity to go back and kind of map out the region, that we really kind of, plopped it on a map and said, this is now like, legit an official part of the setting. But it almost kind of happened as like a side effect of all those other decisions, as I recall. But James, do you have any thoughts on that?
And who's the actual Sasserine creator? Is that you, James?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
Yeah,
very cool.
That whole Sasserine map and everything was something that I kind of built up from scratch, and
that's awesome.
You can see my obsession with making sure every street gets a name in this map. That's something that I do not share that with many people. A lot of people don't go that deep into city maps, but yeah, I love giving names to the streets and all that. One of the elements too that we wanted, like we were saying, drawing in elements from Age of Worms and Savage Tide and Shackled City all into one thing. Wanted to draw in Isle of Dread. I think Scuttle Cove came in pretty late because we realized we wanted some pirates later on. But there was the Tomoe-chan stuff, Heaven Shrine of Tomoe-chan, that we wanted to go back to and explore. And I think that was Erik and I have been working together so long, it's kind of hard to just separate whose idea was what. I think that was my idea to bring in Tomoe-chan, because that's one adventure that I've always just really loved, because it's just so. Yeah, at the time there was it was so non-Eurocentric. Yeah,
and you're there.
I don't remember. I think putting Sasserine where we put it was in part because we wanted to go to Tomoe-chan, and that meant we couldn't go to Hepmonoland or somewhere like that, or
Harold Johnson's newer Tomoe. He had changed the name slightly, but there you go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
James, can you imagine
cool.
an easier sell than coming to me and being like, "Do you think we could visit the hidden shrine of Tomoe-chan in this adventure?"
Yeah,
yeah, James.
I think it's
do.
more like we're going to visit the hidden shrine of Tomoe-chan. It's like it was already assumed that it was
It's like, of course
That's
we are. Right.
That is, so and Far Shore, is that Gary Julian? Because you did some Far Shoring, right? In this too, or it was just touched on? Yeah, south of the Isle of Dread, way down at the bottom here, way down here on the map.
Yeah, that's well, Greg Vaughn and Gary Julian, I think, were both involved in that whole shenanigan. That was, I can't remember if we made up did we make up Far Shore for Savage Tide, or was that something that we had brought in earlier?
Gary? I know he's on. He's in chat, so yeah. So that's cool. But yeah,
there was an element we wanted to do a sort of city building, I guess, and to do that, we needed to have something that wasn't really established yet.
Gary says it was made up for Savage Tide.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I'm losing my timeline here for one thing. Isn't the Porphyry House Horror in Scuttle Cove?
Yes.
Okay, so that existed way before.
Like 96,
well,
I think.
Not
Dungeon
way
96.
Before. No, it was done. It was that was in the sealed section.
Yeah, it was the Book of Vile Darkness.
All right, so Scuttle Cove.
That was the cover that was incomplete, by the way. I mean that's
right. That's right.
Yeah, and you can tell when you look at it. It was an amalgamation of a couple of images. It was art director magic on that cover.
Yeah, there's a lot of art director magic out there, and it's good.
All right, so that one got retconned back because I don't think that was specifically placed in the Pirate Isles at that time. It was kind of a nebulous. It was
that whole adventure was a case of I think it was Chris Thompson or Chris Youngs at the time was on it, and he came to me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to do a really no holds barred grotesquerie mature audience adventure?" And I was like, yes I do.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Porphyry House Horror was basically built to be kind of just it's this in this island basically in the middle of the ocean, and you could put it anywhere. We did a lot of that stuff with Dungeon because we knew people, if they saw that it was set in a specific campaign setting, they wouldn't want to run it if they weren't running that campaign setting. So
cool. So you're taking an amalgamation of a lot of things to and that's a great thing, putting this all together.
So much, Jake. Just quickly, if I can jump in,
please. Yes.
In this era, Greyhawk was just being pilfered. You know, it was like, oh, let's do Temple of Elemental Evil and set it in the Forgotten Realms, or let's do, you know, all this. A lot of that 25th anniversary stuff was kind of like, again, it was meant to not be Greyhawk adventures so much as just here's the redo of the classic, and if you want to make it in the Forgotten Realms or something, you can't. And I was like, but can't we get something back in the trade? You know, come on. And so somebody who didn't have their eyes on the Isle of Dread, so we stole it.
Yeah,
borrowed it.
I think a lot of people were very happy about it too.
We bisected it Blackmore style. Everyone gets one.
Everyone gets it.
It
goes all in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it sounds like, first of all, Cauldron was placed on the map later. You had it, but you're like, it's down there somewhere. It didn't really get on the map till now too, till the Savage Tide.
That's right.
Okay, got that. So, and then it just so happened it worked right in this area of the Hell Furnaces. Sassarine works here, and then you run and you go with it from that point on. And then, so James, you put together a great group, a great cast on this. And I stole this from one of the Wikipedias. On the synopsis of all the authors you have here. So you got yourself, Nicholas Logue, Richard Pett, Jason Bowman, Stephen Greer, and Gary. There's the Tides of Dread one. Wesley Snyder, James Sutter, Tito Liady. There's yourself and Richard again. Robert Schwab, Eric Boyd. There you go. Played last night. Wolfgang and Greg on the last one. Nice group.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, we definitely had and I mean, we still do. We still have like this gathering of freelancers that we use a lot, and we've always tried to expand that and get new authors in, and basically give other people a chance to get their voice in there. But one of the realities again of doing this every single month is you don't have a lot of time to go find new authors. And so when you find somebody that is, a good writer, knows the rules, is creative, and probably most importantly at all, can hit deadlines,
Okay.
they're going to get a lot of work, and we're going to go back to them over and over. So I forget who was the new writer for Savage. It might have been Wes and James. I think this is their first Adventure Path installment.
Okay.
A couple others too.
How'd you come up with the general? What's the end game on this? I know Sassarine's your, like, I got to use that for a start. How are we getting to the end? What is go through the synopsis for everyone who's watching, what you're attempting to accomplish.
I wanted it to be an adventure path where you fight the toughest, you go through the entire adventure path and you fight the toughest monster, basically, at the end. And for me, that was Demogorgon. Mm-hmm. By the way, we're going to use spoilers. We're going to be spoiling some of the...
Okay. That was a question in the audience. Why Demogorgon? It was in the audience question already. So yeah, good. Okay.
Because he's my favorite demon. He's my favorite demon because he's doesn't look like a dude with a goatee, and I was always bored by that sort of element. The tiny little horns goatee demons are, I've grown to appreciate them more in my maturity, I guess. But at the time, the fact that this guy had 2 heads, tentacles, bird legs, he had every single time he touched you, you rotted or lost levels or did other weird different things. And depending upon which head you looked at, you get charmed or frightened or whatever. And he was in charge of dinosaurs. And he had the most hit points of anything in the entire game. You go through the whole monster manual, and the closest one to his 200 hit points was, I think, Asmodeus at 199, which is not as much as Demogorgon. And so, on top of that, he wasn't one that really had a lot of screen time in a lot of different adventures. I mean, you'd see him show up, as Cult of Demogorgon and all that, but it was usually Orcus that got a lot of the limelight, particularly with like Bloodstone. Zikmoy, of course, with Temple of Elemental Evil, but there hadn't really been a definitive Demogorgon campaign, and he needed one.
We had just done a 3-part Grazit adventure path sort of arc thing in the those Istabin adventures and also the Fiendish Embrace adventure that's got that cover.
Yes, an awesome cover.
Love that Wayne Reynolds cover. And then, like James said, Book of Vile Darkness leaned really heavy into Orcus. We had done Kurzit in Dungeon 112, so it was kind of like Demogorgon's turn, I think, as much as it was the coolest supervillain left to play with, essentially, and it was a big one. And I think also the jungle setting, I don't know if it was because of the mandrill heads or whatever, but there was just something that seemed to fit there, the serpentine element, the monkey element or the ape element, just seemed like the perfect fit. So that was another one where it was just a no-brainer.
I've wondered this for a while, how much us boosting the Demogorgon signal had to do with Stranger Things using them.
Well, I mean, we were really the only people mining that type of. I mean, not really. Eventually, there was more, like with the Hordes of the Abyss, which we wrote. But when it came especially to the Demonomicon of Igwilv herself, I mean, this era of D&D was especially early 3rd edition was really about moving kind of away from that, like talking the talk of embracing, like, oh, it's Greyhawk or whatever, but really that to most of the people was just like a cheap, again, it's so interesting now. Being sort of on the older side of the people working in the industry, we were very much not that, 20 some years ago. And I think the people who were in charge of D&D, speaking for myself, and they're 10 years older than I was, and I've said this on the show before, but I think that to people like, for instance, I think I'll just name a name, Bill Slavacek, who was in charge of D&D at the time. I think Greyhawk to those folks was the 1980 folio, not the 83 box set. And so if you sort of take the idea of like, oh, it's just like a sketch and it's yours to fill in all the blanks and there's really no there, that's a very folio kind of approach to the setting. And that is not the 83 version, and it's certainly not the From the Ashes version. And I promise you, it's not what became sort of the Living Greyhawk era, which tried to tie all that stuff together. And so, I think James and I and others were just a little too young to fully buy into that, because we really loved all that sort of default continuity, the world as implied by the Monster Manual 2, and not just the world, but the cosmology, the setting, and everything. That to me was D&D as much as the rules, and I know James felt the same way. And so that meant that when we were playing with those tools as editors of the magazines, it wasn't just, hey, let's throw in some new magic items that people would really like, or let's put together a class, a subclass or something. It was like, let's play with all the tools. And if you like that kind of thing, you'd probably really liked the Paizo era of the magazines. And it's interesting because it was not... I mean, there was some stuff that we did that I almost felt like we had to be a little sneaky to get away with. And because it was so, like, there just was not, the people in charge did not value the history of the brand at that point. There's just no other way of saying it. And you see what happened with 4th edition, and that was obviously the kind of approach that they took. And now, I think, ironically, they really lean into all that stuff, and they really lean into Igwilv being Tasha, which was really just a half-assed thing that we did in Expedition to the Ruins of Grey. So they're now really playing, they're dancing to the tune that we were playing, 20 years ago. They just didn't like it very much back then. But it always makes me very happy to see that the time of Dungeons and Dragons' greatest financial success and popular success was at a time when they were much more following the kind of approach to continuity and the history of the game that James and I did in the magazines. So better late than never, I guess. But
yeah, well, everything is neutral setting now. So
cool.
Yeah, right. So we won't get into that tonight. This is a positive discussion tonight. So
hey,
yes.
Blue Nixie. Oh my God.
Yeah. I threw out some pics here. I couldn't go through all 12, but I threw out some pictures that are scrolling through. So the end game is, I just want to throw up Demogorgon and have a fight at the end against that. I respect that. You're bluntly honest on that. But with that, there's going to be a lot of other side tricks going on. The Red Fleet, the Crimson Fleet shows up, right? Is that okay? Who's some of the other antitheses you're going to run into along this path?
So when you go and you pick your main bad guy, your villain, Demogorgon in this case. You can't have him show up at the start because he's too tough, and frankly, he's too tough to even fight at the end. Even with the players getting to be 21st level and starting to get epic level stuff, you need to. The last 4 adventures of that thing were basically about kind of needling away at Demogorgon and doing all these little side quests and everything to have a chance to fight him. So once you start there, you're starting in Sasserine, you're ending on the Abyss and Gaping Maw and all these other areas, and you kind of just can work from either side to start filling out the other characters. And one of the things that we kind of learned from Shackled City and Age of Worms is that having a home base for your characters is super important. You got to have a place where you can go back to and feel like that's your home. And with Savage Tide, you didn't really have that. So we had to come up with this idea that the Blue Nixie is kind of your base of operations the entire time. You even end up sailing in the Abyss and all that. And that means that the crew of the Blue Nixie has to basically become the supporting characters, the supporting cast and crew. So that was characters like Lavinia and Vanthus and a couple others were going to be part of that journey. And then you could pull them out and have them showing up later on, like when they got captured and transformed and all of that stuff. As for other characters, it was really a case of, I believe, Erik, you and I sitting down and saying, who do we want in here? We know we want to stop at Tomoe-chan. We know we want to go to the Isle of Dread. And that means we got to, touch on Coprus and stuff like that. Pulling in Scuttle Cove, let us, bring some of those characters back. And then the last few volumes of the entire thing, where you're kind of traipsing through the abyss, that was a case where it was like, well, this is a chance, at least for me, to have all of my favorite demon lords show up. And so there was Oboxob, of course, which is a just throwaway name as far as I can tell in Monster Manual 2 back in AD&D, that I've always thought was really cool sounding. And in my homebrew campaign, he was like the main bad guy, so I wanted to have him play a role. Shami Amare from a super early volume of Dungeon. I wanted her to have a presence in here, in part because I think that was the first time a new demon lord got statted up in Dungeon. So
is that the succubus?
Yeah. Was that an Ed Greenwood adventure? I don't remember the name of the adventure, but there's a couple of others. I mean, we'd already done stuff with Curzit, who is kind of Demogorgon light. He's like one-headed and only has shorter tentacles and
less ape-like.
Yeah, less ape-like, but still Demogorgon adjacent. So yeah, it was just kind of a case. We had all these pieces, and then we started putting them all together. And the whole idea of it basically being in 3 parts. Like the first part was like Sasserine and the Journey, and the second part was all the Isle of Dread and pirate stuff, and the third part was the Abyss. Also helped us narrow down which character we wanted to focus on. Egwoo, of course, had to be in there as well, and having her on the cover was a pretty cool final. Got in right at the last minute, because we've been doing so much Egwoo stuff in Dungeon Magazine or Dragon Magazine. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think that was, if I remember correctly, the further we got into Paizo's history, the more busy Wolf Bauer got with his own stuff.
That's true.
And I had to start getting pretty sneaky about it. Like, all right, Wolf, you want to write for Savage Tide? And I think he was like, I don't know. I'm pretty busy. He's like, well, you get to write the one where Egwolf shows up. You get to stat up Egwolf and all that. Oh, all right. I think I did a similar thing with Rise of the Rune Lords. Is what's your favorite? I think I asked him what his favorite giant was or something like that.
Sneaky
like, well, you
there.
can do Stone Giant. You learn all sorts of sneaky underhanded tricks as an editor.
Get people to write for. That's great. That's a good story. Did not know that. Wow. Okay. So is it every 4 adventures is a third of what you are talking about here for the most part through these? It goes every.
It's more like every 6 or so adventures. Like just looking there.
Yeah.
Like first 4 is the journey there, and then we got the Isle of Dread. We knew we wanted to. Let me back up a little bit. One of the things that we mentioned at the start of this was getting Ben Wooten and Warren Mayhew to do a lot of the concept art for this. And
it's awesome.
They just knocked it out of the park with a lot of the Isle of Dread stuff, because obviously they already had their headspace in that sort of King Kong kind of zone. And we got so many cool just images and illustrations of locations that there was like one that was like, this is an image of the party, a top-down view of the party walking over a subterranean bridge with an aboleth swimming under him. And that basically told us, well, we need an adventure with a lot of aboleths in there. Just being able to pick out like locations and stuff that they drew and say, this adventure takes place in this castle or in this dungeon-looking area was also really helpful in figuring out where we're going to go. All this, Coprus.
Yeah,
another thing that I really like.
James, if you don't have this, I'll send you this in PDF. This is Gary Julian and crew put this together a little while ago. Gary says it's not complete, but it's pretty good for for the Greyhawk Guide to the Isle of Dread. So just going through this with a lot of great things that they did, and they tied in with your adventure path, and that's so look, chapter 1. They discuss all the Savage Tide and all. Just so that to just note that it is still on the minds of the community, and that's a question. I'll save that lore question for the end. All right. So we got the Demogorgon question, and then Erik, after this, please ask something. Or yes. I don't want to take up everything here. Raven, is there a Ravenloft connection?
If
Sam Weiss, I think
there is, it might be because Wes wrote an adventure and I developed it, so we both have a really deep fondness for Ravenloft that goes all the way back to the very first adventure.
Because
before it was campaign setting.
the mists down near down there the Isles. Is that what the connection is? That's what Gabriel's saying. Anton Misroll. Sam says. Anton.
I don't remember. It may have been like Erik, like you were saying, with all of these different elements and stuff like that is.
His ruined estate is outside Sasserine.
And of course,
pretty cool. Whoever came up with that's a smart one.
Yep. That was probably Wes, if I had to guess, because he's a big Ravenloft guy, and at this point, he'd been working at Paizo already for a while too. So
I did not know that either. So I'm learning a lot tonight. That there's actually that. Really cool.
When did and it's also this case too, is like some of the stuff happened before, like that. I'm not as super in depth lore wise on the Ravenloft campaign and all that. Again, that's Wes was saying. So I don't remember if this guy showed up before or after or what, but sometimes they creep in there, and I think that's one of the great things about just working with all of this lore and across all of these different settings is there's so many different things that you can draw upon. And if it's a name that's been used before, when your player characters, or even as you're reading it as a GM, it's going to feel more hefty. It's going to feel more legit if it's something that's like, that name sounds familiar. Like if you're going up and against your adventure against Valuth, you don't really know who that is. But if you say this adventure's against Vecna, then all of a sudden everybody just is keyed in. It's like, oh, we want to fight that guy. So that's one of the things that really was fun playing with all this stuff too.
That gives a campaign life. Gives a campaign life.
Yeah.
It breathes in reality. Like, oh my gosh, that character was in the game. Like I remember that character from 10 years ago or whatever. It's the key to a good campaign setting, and that's why they're so memorable. Erik, what do you got here?
James, do you remember? Do any of the adventures in Savage Tide stand out in your memory as being like among your favorites?
Good question.
It's hard to say. One of the things that trips me up whenever I do those is like if I pick one favorite, then the people who wrote the other ones feel left out. And this is so far back in the past that I think the statute of limitations.
I'm lucky if I remember anything at all.
I think the one I'm probably personally most proud of is the first one because I wrote it, and just being able to create that whole area and start everything up. I mean, the same way I suspect your favorite one in Age of Worms was Spring Karen. It's just this feeling of like, I created the seed for this entire thing, and everything kind of grew out from there. That one is probably the one I'm the most proud of. I think maybe the one I really like the one James and Wes wrote, where you go down into the Underdark below the Isle of Dread, because it's another area that I really enjoy. Letting Richard Pett play around in Scuttle Cove, that was pretty fun.
Is there an aboleth beneath an Isle of Dread?
Yeah,
oh, probably.
Probably.
For sure, yeah, because we had that cool concept art of one slithering around in the area. I think it was less of a case of like, this adventure path has to be about Aboleth, and more a case of like, all right, Wes, James, when you write this adventure, there's got to be this encounter, and we had the picture.
It's interesting, so you wrote the first installment of Savage Tide. Right. And Rise of the Rune Lords, for that matter, but that's later. I wrote the first installment of Age of Worms as editor-in-chief, and then Shackle City. Chris Perkins wrote the first one, and then he had sort of been involved with the very beginnings of the idea of doing a linked adventure path before he moved on to the RPG department. So it is interesting that the 3 dungeon adventure paths, the first installment was written by an editor of Dungeon.
I think that that's what helped actually make it happen, really.
I do, because
you have somebody that invested in wanting to make sure the entire thing plays out, and you can get started on writing that first adventure and have that information for all the other authors to draw upon.
Yep. So, and you know what's going to come in later even before the outline is done. You know, like I wrote Whispering Cairn, or at least the large part of it back when Age of Worms was going to be a 20 adventure campaign about the Rod of Seven Parts, and so there was a little bit of a pivot there, but I was able to put like those plot seeds that I knew would be developed later in the campaign because that was my job. I was going to make sure that they were, and so I think that that's kind of the same philosophy that we've seen a number of adventure paths actually over the years.
It's also a case of just timing too, like particularly for Burnt Offerings. The case there was we couldn't tell anybody what we were doing,
right,
and we had no time to do it. So
Burnt Offerings
very much
being the first installment of Rise of the Runelords for folks.
Right, exactly. And so that was a case of, well, I'll just write this one, and we will hire a couple of our regular go-tos, Nick Logue and Rich Pett, and get them writing it. I think there was a point when we first started having them write it that they didn't know they were writing for a Pathfinder thing. They were working on the new adventure path was all they knew. And we clued them in pretty quickly, but
I'm remembering now, even before, like we had a whole career before Pathfinder even started with years of stuff. And I remember a thing we would say at conventions around the time and into the first couple of Pathfinder APs, and certainly I'm sure up to the current day. But I remember us sort of saying, you learn things each time you do one of these. Like Age of Worms benefited from the lessons that we learned from Shackled City. Savage Tide must have benefited from the lessons that we learned from Age of Worms. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to what were the lessons from Shackled City and Age of Worms that you kind of built into Savage Tide. Do you remember anything?
Yeah, there's a couple. The first thing that really comes to mind is the lesson of we can't do 20 adventures. It has to be fit in a year, just basically fit it into 12 volumes. And so Savage Tide had the advantage story-wise from the very start, being something that fit those 12 volumes. And that helped to, contain a lot of the scope creep and make sure that I wasn't doing way too much for all the stuff going on. It was also a case where we'd heard a lot of just feedback about people enjoying recurring characters, whether it was somebody like Celeste who came through all three of them, or just building new characters and learning the styles of the authors, like the people that we've been working with. It's like, oh, well, Rich Pett is really good with just outlandish, strange, gory stuff, and like Greg Vaughn is really great with the classic dungeon crawl type thing. And knowing that
that's awesome.
Who to aim at the right adventure was something that started becoming really, really easier. Not easier, I guess easier. I guess is the best word. I am worried about using the word easy because that's
people's wheelhouses, right? And that's it. Where they can just put something out quick, and good. And
it's also a case too where you're constantly like trying out new things and pushing boundaries. I think with Savage Tide in particular, I think of the three adventure paths is probably the one that is the most mature content. So we pushed a lot of boundaries there with like what sort of things we were going to illustrate and stories we were going to cover. I think we had 2 or 3 images we had to basically go back and swap out because it was just they were too racy or too violent for Wizards of the Coast. And I understand that in hindsight. So,
jeez, James, I leave you alone with the magazine for 12 issues.
Yeah, that's also. Just growing up, that is the genre. Horror is the genre that I grew up just eating, and I had my dad letting me stay up late at night to watch creature features. My grandma giving me copies of Clive Barker and Stephen King. My grandpa giving me like old pulp stuff and comic books. And it just, you are what you eat, I guess.
All right, James, did you watch A Night Stalker?
Oh, there's so many Night Stalkers out there.
Talking about Darren McGavin, the original from the 70s.
No, I did not. I never actually got to see that one. One of the weird elements growing up in the middle of the redwoods is that you got to watch the TV on the TV antenna because there was no cable going up the mountainside. And that meant we got to see like a local channel and NBC and ABC and NBC and CBS. And anything on any other station was mystery.
Let's talk over CBS.
Every once in a while. Oh, okay.
It was late night though.
I'm not sure.
You may be a little younger than me. It was like 73, 74, 75. So
that was before I started watching a lot of stuff. I was more in the era of In Search of.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creature Features was a big thing.
Then Buffy came along.
Yeah.
A question from the chat. Cannibal asks, if you could do another adventure path set in Greyhawk, what would it be and what would it be about?
That's a great question.
So it would be, well, first of all, I'd have to like re-figure out stuff about Greyhawk.
Right.
Because so much of
got to deprogram all the Pathfinder stuff. Yeah.
The adventure path we were going to do after Savage Tide, for example, we were calling it Genie War. And that was going to be basically set in north of the Sea of Dust. And that one eventually turned into the Pathfinder Adventure Path Legacy of Fire. So a lot of the storylines we do in Pathfinder really could fit pretty well into Greyhawk. But if I were going back to do a Greyhawk Adventure Path today, I would pick something that would be full on for sure Greyhawk. And that probably would be Ayuz, I think, would be something I'd like to explore. I know there was, at the time, we kind of avoided it because he'd been kind of a big deal all over the place. We touched a little bit about him on Ruins of Greyhawk, but probably Ayuz. Or, honestly,
as long as you're not saying Great Kingdom stuff.
No, I would say, doing the full-on top to bottom Castle Mori would be pretty fun.
Oh, wow. So, James, I am thrilled to hear what you would do with Ayuz the Evil, especially in light of the fact that he was easily dispatched by Mika Oba, the wolf nomad. Actually, not Mika Oba, the princess that Mika Oba was trying to get with. She dispatched him with ease, I believe is the quote. And even Ayuz, son of the Witch Queen, a demon lord, has much to fear from a woman scorned. Am I right? How would you retcon Ayuz the Evil being dispatched by the princess from the wolf nomads?
Well, he's been killed a couple of times. He's been beaten up different times like that. Sure. So there's always ways to bring back great villains. I would probably, just off the top of my head, I would probably go with him being, kind of the Omen, where he is reborn into a new body and grows up and becomes sort of a new incarnation of Ayuz that slowly transforms. And you could pick somebody that was like important to somewhere. So, honestly, I would probably start it out in Saltmarsh just because that's a town that I've always enjoyed. And I did a lot of work on Saltmarsh and Dungeon Master Guide 2. So having the new Ayuz be born in Saltmarsh, where do you go from there?
We should workshop a AP outline as a special episode of Gab and
that would be fun.
They're trying to rope you guys in. I see what they're doing. The Cannon Fire guys are trying to sneakily rope you guys in because there's new Cannon Fire. It's Cannon Fire Chronicles. There's new publications starting to come out soon. A lot of articles coming out. So if any of you who are Norker, Gary, please put whatever you want in chat about it. I
do like, James, the idea. I use the young.
Visions, okay.
Right? We've got I use the old. Here's I use the young. And then it'd be fun if he Benjamin Buttons aged super fast. And he's all this little mannequin guy, but he starts as a petulant King Joffrey kind of.
So or even a case where it's he's maybe there's more than one. Maybe there's 6 or 7 Ayuzes that are born into the world and they start battling together, and that way you could have Ayuz show up multiple times or something. Nice. And the thing that would be the toughest thing for me would be avoiding just trying to go sprawling all over the place. So I would really want to kind of dial in.
I think Saltmarsh is a little bit outside of Ayuz's sphere of influence. I would maybe suggest a gentle suggestion of that could happen in High Folk or
Oh my gosh.
somewhere a little more northerly than. But maybe that's what it's all about.
It's also
they've got
case like-
tunnels going all over the place, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh man, Anna will never let you guys live that down. Let's talk. All right. So Anna goes, "How the hell did the army travel thousands of miles underground in this thing to come up there?" I said, "Anna, that doesn't mean they traveled from the Ayu's lands all the way underground. They probably entered somewhere nearby and they went underground. And then the collapse stops the army.
There could be portals.
I know, but that's
Anna, we could also throw Jason under the bus and say that was a mistake Bowman made."
In a campaign world where there is a canonically straight hole through a mountain range,
I agree.
From our friend Slerotin, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, and I'm not. I think I should bust Anna when she's not here, but yeah.
Well, that's an interesting.
The idea was it was Underdark. They came through the Underdark.
Yeah, it was definitely the Underdark.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I think is a Greyhawk question that maybe James, since you're the guest of honor, let's get your take. Uh-oh. Lake of Unknown Depths. Is it bottomless? Is there a bottom to the Lake of Unknown Depths? Has it simply been that they have not yet discovered they don't know the depth, but there is depth? Or is it in fact like maybe connected to the elemental plane of water, or it is somehow essentially bottomless? Because I think that the idea that there couldn't be a direct passage underground is sort of predicated on the idea that maybe there is no bottom to the Lake of Unknown Depths, but I don't know that that's canonical. So let's find out. James is in charge. Is there a lake bottom of the Lake of Unknown Depths?
That's a good one.
I would say there is a lake bottom, but it's not in the physical universe. It transitions down. You go down deep enough, and it transitions into the abyss. Because I love demons and stuff like that. So you come out. It would basically be, here's the top in Greyhawk. Here's the surface of the abyss. So you just flip it over and you swim all the way through, and you come out on the surface.
So the water upside down.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. You could do that pretty much anywhere. The elemental plane water, obviously, the shadow plane. But I think
that's great.
One of the things that I love about that name is that it just is so tantalizing. It's like nobody's seen the depths before, but I want to make the character that finds the bottom there. And if I were to do something like that, I would be tempted to do some sort of, I don't know, a submarine trapped on, like, slowly sinking down into the Lake of Unknown Depths, and just weird visions of things she bumps out through.
We are having workshops, discussions on future Gabbins.
We are cheating.
That was a great idea, Eric.
Thank you. We are cheating because we keep calling it the Lake of Unknown Depths. Here's another undetermined Greyhawk thing. How do you pronounce the real name of the most important body of water in the entire campaign?
Near Deeve.
Okay, we got Near Deeve.
Near Deeve.
I hack everything. Near Deeve.
So one thing that I think is perhaps a guiding stone toward a potential answer, but like any continuity connections with Greyhawk, you're basically just making believe, But there is a port on the lake. Isn't Divers on the lake as well?
Yes, on the southwestern.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the first syllable of Divers is dive, D-Y-V, which is the second word in the name. So technically, I think an argument could be made. I would never make this argument. I would just call it the Lake of Unknown Depths. But I think you could make an argument that the second word should be pronounced dive.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
But no one knows.
Well, that also kind of like Greyhawk. It's the nearest big place you could dive into.
No one knows how to say Rene either.
Yeah, I say Rene because that's how you would say it in French.
Yeah.
It's not France. I don't know why, but that's what I would. What's the name? Okay, Greyhawk stuff erupting from my brain. What's the land version of the Rene again? What are they called? Anyone? Isn't there an offshoot of the Rene that are land people, Atloy or something like that.
Attloy, Dale says.
There you go.
Attloy. Attloi.
I had it. I got it.
Yeah,
I still got it, baby.
Are they from another planet? Who knows, BB? I think that's a silly thing, but
That's dumb.
yes,
No.
thank you.
Would they come over in a
Yeah,
in
the other
a
planet.
portal with
in
a bunch of monks
They came
in
over
in
Barrier
the Scarlet Brotherhood lands,
Oh
the
my gosh.
Kara-Tur portals from Fate of Vista.
So
Sorry, everyone.
some things that happen in Greyhawk to both of you. The Circle of 8 gets destroyed 3 times.
What?
Right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Vecna lives
3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one.
The Falcon.
Indisputable.
The
Indisputable.
Falcon series.
What's that?
The Flames of
Is
the
that
Falcon. Yeah.
Is that the one where you cut up little things and you make houses?
They destroy,
Yeah,
she destroys
that
the
was
Circle of
pretty
8 in that too. Oh,
What?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh.
How could you?
That one is less memorable.
I don't
vaguely
think I have
remember that.
ever even read that. That's
Yeah,
like
but, yeah.
that has
fine.
got all the rewards of like 5 shall be won. Like it's not worth the effort.
It
to
was
look at those
difficult.
again.
It was a difficult one. Yeah. So
Sorry
that happens a
for
lot.
whoever wrote
but
them.
so at the end
They killed a Circle of 8 in that adventure.
yes, you have to get them back.
And then the other time is what, Roger in Return of the 8.
Return of the 8, you bring 2 of them back, but from the ashes you kill off Tensor and Aluk. Aluk never comes back.
What's the third death of the Circle of 8?
I'm just saying I count the Tensor Aluk destruction as the third one, where 2 members permanently get killed off. You get 1 back. By the way, Roger says very endearing things of you, Eric, and James, and Jason.
Oh, good.
All because he's become a regular on the show, like Len used to be. I have him; he's on like almost once a month now for just general topics. So Roger's really becoming back a community member. Just so you're aware of that. Yeah.
I used to have a signature. I used to have a signature on rejection letter.
Return of 8 is enough. Thank you, BB.
I think a lot of us have that signature.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think I have a signature. He was a big part of the reason why I just kept trying to get things into Dungeon Magazine, because I think one of the first or second things I sent in was just on my little typewriter. I think it was an adventure involving the Shadow Plane or something like that. And he said, "No thanks, but keep trying." I think was the only little thing he scribbled on there. And that little bit of encouragement was enough to just keep me going. And then I ended up having that big folder of all my collected rejection letters in my back seat of my car, and it got broken into, and they stole it. I think they thought it was like, I don't know what they wanted.
Maybe I'm scarred too and remembering wrong things. Oh, and the rebirth of Ayus. If you read Return to White Plume Mountain, okay, for the anniversary edition, Charybdis is reborn as a baby.
Right.
Yeah. So. That's it.
I do remember that.
Yeah, so you got some good stuff. You got a lot.
Did you guys know that the villain in the most important Dungeons and Dragons product of all time, the Dragon Strike video game with the hyper reality VHS tape that came with it, the villain in that is called Charybdis with a T.
Oh.
Is it Charybdis's brother? Is Dragon Strike canonically Greyhawk? Is a question for the guest? Dragon Strike is it canon, James? You're on.
Well, first thing I checked when you mentioned Charybdis is I checked the keyboard to see if K and T were right next to each other.
They're not.
They're not. So it seems like that was a legitimate choice.
Mm-hmm. Are you feeling brave tonight, James?
I would say probably not.
Probably not.
Probably this.
Because
I agree.
And in part because I never really looked at it. I never got into it when I was a kid. I kind of missed out on that whole thing, I guess, because I don't know why. I should have, but
hey, these tangents are great. Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
You invited me, man.
Eric, no, I'm dead serious. This is fun. A question from the audience way early. Ed always goes, there's stuff on the cutting room floor that never made it in publication because, I had to take it out because it was 100,000 words, whatever. Is there any,
Right.
do we have any lore additions for Savage Tide that got in the cutting room floor that you wish got at, stayed in?
Oh,
I know that's a tough one.
nothing popped. Again, it was a while back, but one of the things that we were really pretty good at this point was not ordering too much content because we knew we had this much words to do, and we didn't want to let somebody write too much and then they basically be robbing themselves because we wouldn't pay them for anything we wrote over it. So there was not a lot of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor off the top of my head. Although at one point I would have liked to have a larger dungeon element for Tomoe-chan. It's sort of a tiny little side trip there.
It's okay.
Not
if the answer is
really
no.
anything significant comes to mind.
Okay. Tomoe-chan is which adventure? Who wrote that one? Is Tides of Dread? No, that's Gary's.
That was the
Broken Idol?
Fourth one.
Fourth one. Here There Be Monsters. Oh, Jason Bullman.
Yeah.
That one says Shipwrecked on the Isle of Dread.
No, so it was the third one then.
Third one, The Sea Wyvern's Wake by Richard Pett.
That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and the Sargasso. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. So, very cool. Have you guys ever seen Dungeon
Lost
Meister's?
Continent?
No, Dungeon Meister's stuff on DeviantArt. I want to show you guys some stuff.
Okay.
He has done. He's French. He does some work for us, like in Cannon Fire here and there. He has some great artwork from this series. Look, this is during the Isle of Dread.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's Isle of Dread. I gotta watch it because there's a lot of nudity in these. So that was Isle of Dread.
Oh,
You did say it's French.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of really good pictures from there's from the ship when they're shipwrecked. Really, some wonderful stuff of the adventuring party. Yeah, I mean, just they get stuck in the Sargasso and they have to. I'm not sure if they're on here, but just to show you
That's-
shipwreck.
that Sargasso element, that's my William Hope Hodgson fandom showing all the way back then even.
Yeah.
Just this whole idea of like just haunted ocean, creepy Sargasso Sea elements.
It is so and I got that one confused with the one that's in Greyhawk Adventures, but it's not the same thing, right? It's not the
Right.
What's Troy? Which one's that one that you were writing up on? The Sargasso is different than the other one.
Something of lost ships.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Steve
They're separate. Jungle of Lost Ships. They're separate.
That's it.
Yeah. Nice job, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Sargasso. Yeah. Sargasso is really cool though. I love that concept because you ain't going anywhere. It's like a curse.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a fantastic idea. Eric still got it. I mean, yeah.
I know.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
So
There's a Dennis Wheatley novel called The Lost Continent, which is all about the Spanish Inquisition getting stuck in the Sargasso Sea, and they kind of build their own sort of weird neo in there, and they walk around on it with these big balloons that they're lifting them up so they can walk on the surface, and there's giant octopuses, and it's good stuff. It's very inspiring, I guess.
So,
and also, I mean, it's just like growing up as a fisherman's son, just seeing like these just swaths of kelp after a big storm when they've all been uprooted and they're just going to float. It's unsettling to see that much just seaweed floating in the middle of the ocean.
All right. So as you continued on with this, and I'm assuming you were ecstatic with the final product, right? Also, whoever's idea was this was such genius. The supplemental digitals that you put out for everything back then.
It's probably the audience's idea, honestly.
Yeah.
It was, you think? Yeah. Because you could just get to, and it was such higher quality resolution on pictures. It was just genius. That's cool, Troy. Yeah, I thought that was what happened. You wrote them up. I got to do this. I got to move this here to put this one up, and then go to the last one here. Let me go to 150. There we go. So we come to the last. Yes, and this is the ending in here. And I forget what was the poster. Map of mystery inside. It was just. Oh, okay. It was.
It was a brand new. Yeah, it was just Chris West make a new world for us to explore.
Okay. All right. So cool picture of Demogorgon on the cover and the end fight.
That was basically we went to Wayne and I said,
It's beautiful.
I want to see Demogorgon fight all of the iconics we invented. And
it's beautiful.
It was a tough thing to. Normally, we wouldn't put 12 figures fighting a 13 figure on a cover.
Demogorgon had kind of a cool illustration in his first Monster Manual appearance, but subsequent to that, he really suffered visually. It was often really skinny too. And stupid looking.
Yeah.
And we had Steve Prescott redesign Demogorgon on the cover of the dragon that had the Demonomicon Wolf in it. And so Wayne is riffing off of that Steve Prescott revision to how he looks. Bulked him up a bit, made him look super rad.
Yeah.
Do we know the origin of Demogorgon? Is it from lore of some culture, or is it?
As far as I can tell, it's a monk scrawled the name into the marginalia of something that he was working on, and then it showed up in. Where did it show up? Somewhere like. Not
it's in like
Paradise Lost. It showed up in Paradise Lost.
Really?
It shows up in Moby Dick. Yeah.
Maybe in Blake. It's somewhere weird too. Yeah.
Moby Dick. There's a Demogorgon reference.
Yeah. Well, the name is. They use the name as just like a boogeyman type. The Demogorgon, the boogeyman. It's. I think the origin of the name. It's not something from mythology, but it's something like just a creepy sounding monster name that you take different roots and you throw them together and
right. Okay. Wow. I was just curious if you knew that. Because it's like it was always my favorite demon. Orcus seemed to be too overplayed. I know Anna's favorite's Grazitz because of the Grazitz Wolf connection, which is understandable.
It's the most Greyhawk one in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, Frezzer Blue's pretty Greyhawk.
Well, okay. Frezzer Blue is so Greyhawk, he's basically just Greyhawk. But yeah, Grazit, it's my favorite.
Well, thanks for Mac for that link there. Orcus and Loth's cool too. I love Loth too.
Grazit is like physically attractive.
Right.
He's
like
he's
a
fun
seductor.
because he's the one that is like he should be a devil.
That's
not.
Yeah, that's
that I think is what's really interesting about him.
Anna says
I like that.
Yeah, he's a fallen devil, basically. Yeah. Well,
I don't know if I do that, but I like that he's handsome and human-like, and that makes him scarier, I think. Especially because you look at him and you go, oh, maybe he's 9 feet tall or whatever, but he looks like a normal, handsome guy. And then you see he's got a little extra fingy.
6 fingers, yeah.
Little hints that something's not right there.
Yeah,
I wonder. Okay, workshop.
Yes, all right. No
maybe
time.
the child I use the vessel. I use the younger. Maybe he's identified by the extra. Does Grazit have 2 thumbs, or does he just have extra fingers?
It's an extra finger.
Extra fingers. So maybe that is how they know that the little baby is going to be.
Or that's the sign. It's like a bloody handprint or something with 6 fingers.
Yeah, I like that.
Keep showing up. I mean, if we're going full Omen, that's like a tattoo underneath his scalp.
Yeah, we don't want the Laura Danny.
I think it's even creepier if it's just a little thingy.
Yeah.
Thumbs inverted. That's funny. Yeah. Some interesting ideas, definitely. How many people have I used dead in their campaign? But I'm going to say it's about 1% of all Greyhawk DMs, though.
I mean, canonically, he's dead because of the princess. I'm a canon guy.
I love how you said that, Eric. That's funny. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Oh wow. Yes. Wonderful. James, anything you're like, man, I wish I'd done this differently?
Ooh. I think liked to have foreshadowed the demon stuff more, going all the way through. Like maybe have a demon cult or something like that, more obvious. Because that way, I mean, it's very much the game kind of goes all over. The campaign goes all over the place, from this urban location to oh my god, that larvae picture.
Yeah, that's great.
That's one of the very earliest things I want to do, because the idea is like when you go to the abyss, you turn into a larva, and it's your head on a worm's body. And the idea of like I wanted a NPC that the player characters had grown to hate over the course of the campaign. They kill him a couple of times, and they finally encounter him here in his final form as a larva.
You abuse the hell out of some of the lesser heroes in adventures. I mean, Vane gets ripped apart in expeditions, so it's okay, right? So
I
think
that was Bullman who did the Vane stuff. I think in Expedition, right? Did you do that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that was Jason.
That was
one thing that we did like doing, and just in the art and dungeon, because we had our own little cast of iconics that we used. The Paladin was one we always showed getting killed, because I think it was the very first volume of Age of Worms, where you were running the playtest for Whispering Cairn for us, Eric.
The very first session of the very first Whispering Cairn adventure.
It's like, I want to play the cleric because Wayne did a cool concept art for the cleric. I'll play that character. And then Wes was like, yeah, I want to do the paladin.
Yeah.
And then Wes's character got killed by a swarm in the very first encounter. And it was very disruptive to our morale and like our idea that we're going to be this big band. And it's like, all right, well, now we're Abelard's band. And that's what drew us all together, actually, rather than split us apart. That's why you see the paladin. Yeah.
But then he subsequently ends up getting killed, like in most of the illustrations.
Over and over,
commemorate that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hail to the king, Gary says. All right. So you use Kargath, right?
That was more of an Erik thing, I think, because the whole idea of Demogorgon, I knew that Demogorgon and Death Knights kind of went together just because it was in folio. But when I was coming into this, that whole element, because it was in Polyhedron, and there was that big Death Knight article that you did.
Well, it was in the Living Greyhawk Journal section of
Scott Benny is Kargath, the start from that old dungeon.
And then that Dragon Annual thing or whatever.
I wish I had that's one person I wish I had gotten on the show before he passed. Because what unbelievable stuff Scott did, but yeah, so Kargath is like the known Death Knight, the named original Death Knight, and you're saying that Eric, you said to Greg, have at it in this last adventure. Put Kargath.
I think James was building on stuff that I had done in Dragon. Essentially, I didn't have much to do with this one.
Okay.
Well, no, it was a case where I was trying to pull in all of the different possible Demon Gorgon stuff in this whole thing, and that was something that you had done a lot more work with over on the Living Greyhawk side, and I just wanted to make sure we caught that in there. We put Dino Dragon into one of these volumes, didn't we? Or no, that was in Dragon Magazine from the cartoon.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
There you go. Another cool picture right there. Some neat stuff. Really some neat stuff. I'm just going through this, man. The level, you got to be, you're right. If you're 20th level, it's going to be...
I think you're 21st.
Holy jeez. I mean, this still looks extremely difficult.
This was also the only published adventure path I've run for my group from start to finish, now that I think about it. Because I started just like you did, Eric, with the Whispering Cairn. I was like, well, I got to play test my adventure while I'm writing it. And the group stuck with it. And Jason Nelson had a psionicist character. He had, I forget, it was super powerful, just broken character. And I gave Demogorgon, I don't know if I gave him this in the stat block I published in here, but he had an ability, an epic level ability, it was Spell Stowaway with Time Stop. So if anybody else cast Time Stop next to him, he'd get to hop in and basically fight one-on-one.
That's brutal.
Sure.
And And I did that specifically because that was a tactic that Jason Nelson was using often. And I was like, I'm just gonna set it up, and if it happens, it happens. And so Jason cast the spell in this climactic encounter, and I was like, well, Demogorgon's in there with you. And he's like, oh no. And he ended up, I think, getting to use those rounds of time stop to basically drain his character to 0 level, kill him, drain him to 0 level, open a portal to the negative material plane, and kick him through. And then he had 1 round left over to cast haste. And so when the time stop ends, Jason's character was like, yep, that's fair enough.
So
well
you
played.
killed him dead in that final
yeah.
encounter? Wow.
He came back, I think, in the same encounter. I think somebody burned a wish or two. I think there was
sure.
some sort of something they brought him back. But yeah, it was pretty finalized. But
that's amazing.
Can't find a Sargasso. I was looking for Sargasso pictures. So go for it, Eric. Tangent questions are good. Should I go off on a tangent?
Let's see. What was Celeste's role in this third adventure path? First adventure, she's like a cameo character. Or first, in Cauldron. In Age
she
of
was
Worms,
in Noonan's
she
adventure,
back.
wasn't she?
I think so. Yeah. And then
I think that was just at that point just a character he just threw in there just to do something, and it was just such an intriguing, unusual, weird character that had like a weird agenda that I don't know if it was.
It was
people or us or.
I think what was interesting about it, if I'm remembering correctly, 2 things is it's one of those hooks that didn't get picked up by us or by it was a handful of things like God, we missed that one, and I think there was something in there that like you couldn't detect who she was. Like she was 100% protected from divination, and that of course makes you start going, wait, what? What's going on? And I think I lost track of the character during Savage Tide. So do you remember how you used her?
My gosh. I'm blanking too. It's her power. Her power of
I know it's that non-detection.
I think she shows up. We finally gave her stats and everything, and she showed up as just a powerful. She was like, I think Galia Ladrim, I think, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Was that right?
That rings a bell. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
So that character appears in all adventure paths.
Yeah. She's through line.
And would have appeared in the 4th one probably, and the 5th one. I mean, we were developing a lot of stuff, like the Seeker organization. We were going to reuse a lot with the
Gary would love that.
Eli Tomerast is in there.
Yep.
Oh, that would have been great. And Mike got a little excited because you said north of the Sea of Dust. That's all where he's done all his work, right? All in the Becklunish land. So that would have been cool. But you guys ran it with in Galarian, which is great. So really cool, really cool. All right, so James, you were busy at this time. I mean, you're writing for this. You're doing this. You're not involved in Greyhawk at this point, right? As it's winding down.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're just
I was never really super into the organized play side of things. That's more the Erik side of the conundrum.
Okay, that's cool.
But yeah, I was doing quite a lot. Just I the first D&D book that I got to write was canceled. So that was something that was super exciting. It was the 3rd edition version of the World of Warcraft. And it was going to be this big crossover thing. And then they decided, we're going to move away from doing licensed products. So I think it was Sean Reynolds or Chris Perkins was like, well, congratulations. Usually we have to wait 2 or 3 volumes to have one of our books canceled. You got that out of the way right away. So
canceled before you were.
Yeah.
Wow, it sucks.
There was a lot of that going on at that time at Wizards. I'd fallen in. This is prior to obviously prior to Paizo, but even probably prior to me joining the periodicals department. But a lot of the guys that I would hang out with and go get comics with on Wednesdays and stuff like that were all working on like Pokemon Junior and the Marvel game, and they were trying to do a Centipede RPG at one point because Atari Well, Infogrames was involved with the Hasbro purchase, and they owned all the Atari brands at the time. So they were trying to do like kid-oriented RPG type experiences and game books and stuff. And at the time they were looking at launching Centipede as like a bigger brand than it was. And I think the whole thing just fizzled out. But Harry Potter had an RPG in development at the time. And so over the course of about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, every project that the guys that I was friends with in RPG R&D was canceled. And we're talking about some projects that had 3 or 4 books done and ready to go. And I watched people basically just piss their life away for 3 or 4 years, where all of their creative output was just basically just thrown into a pit and buried. And that messed me up pretty good. And that made me basically never cancel a project at Paizo for the first like 15 years. I subsequently had to cancel a couple, so my streak is done. But I think I almost overcorrected. It just felt like such a shame, to see hard creative effort just tossed in the bin.
That sucks.
I can't imagine, James, what that must have been like as your first project.
It was pretty surreal. I mean, on the one hand, it sucked. It was exciting being able to write the D&D version of one of my favorite games. This was even before the MMO. This was all based on, I think, the third RTS, Warcraft 3. And just being able to be like on the cutting edge of that sort of first time meeting of the minds and all that was really fun. And then on the one hand, having it canceled was super disappointing, but it was also, I don't know if it was a case of like some of the other folks like Sean and Chris and some of the people involved maybe felt guilt. It's like, well, you can work on this Races of Faerun book with Sean. And I think that's another thing too. It's like how, if you're a writer writing for somebody else, how you react to that sort of thing really determines if you're going to still write for them. And so it was, I guess, kind of a curse and a blessing at the same time, because the first thing you ever write is I don't think ever going to be the best thing you ever write.
That's for
you're
sure.
Still learning, and having that thing never come out let me sort of cheat that system a little bit. I guess that's silver linings and all that.
World of Warcraft purists.
I mean, I do like Salem's a lot better than Kerry, so.
They're going to go after you like crazy. They're going to nitpick you to death too. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So it may have been a blessing at the time, because you know how World of Warcraft people are. Sorry, I was one myself back in the day.
I for sure am.
Yeah.
So I'm now just before this, I was a Diablo 4 player.
Yeah, I'm a Diablo 4 guy.
You guys like it a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's super fun.
It's
moody and creepy and pretty and just fun to just sit down on the couch and shoot demons.
Excellent. Yeah, I haven't gotten into it yet. So a couple questions here. Dale has to know this. Who was responsible for this walking stilt people attacking in Sassarine?
I think that was probably me. But it was probably some Erik Mona influence as well.
That's pretty neat. No,
because,
like, no.
It did not intentional influence, but just the whole idea of like just this whole creepy carnival type stuff going on is just a general vibe that I've always enjoyed, but has been magnified since I started working with you, Erik.
That's fair. I'll take that.
I don't remember if this was at the same time Carnival was running, the HBO show. I think it was maybe before that.
No, I think it because we were definitely working. That's interesting. It was in there.
It was close.
Paizo was obsessed with that show. We watched that show and talked about it every day or every week.
Yeah, it was very unpleasant when they canceled it halfway through the season. Like, all
of the shows we were obsessed with had just horrible.
Lost, Battlestar Galactica,
and Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, terrible. Ugh.
Yeah, a lot of them just got like what was the Joss Whedon space one too?
Firefly.
Oh, Firefly. Yeah. A lot of those shows got really humped by the writer's strike that happened around that time.
Bad guys walking on stilts, walking through a crowd. PCs had a hard time taking them down. Yeah, it makes. Yeah, thank you. We love.
It's also a case. I think the idea was like just when you're building encounters, just looking at the way the rules work. And I think I was looking at like, well, there's these rules here for in crowds. Crowds are treated as difficult terrain. And I was like, well, how would you do a fight in a crowd and the bad guys can get around? Put them on stilts.
Wasn't there a Ravenloft Carnivals type publication that came out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was before the HBO show for sure.
Yeah, I
Was
think
it?
Steve Miller wrote that.
Okay. Yeah.
It's got a snake charmer on the cover.
Yeah.
Brom cover, wasn't it?
I think it was a Todd Lockwood
it was,
cover.
No, you're right. It was Todd Lockwood.
Yeah.
Mac just wanted
that was from the era where Ravenloft books were being printed to the tune of about 3,000 copies per, so that's probably worth quite a lot if you've got that one.
There's a lot of
here somewhere.
Rare.
Yeah.
That it looks like Birthright ones are the most rarest now. Some of the Birthright ones.
Cool. I got a whole box of that.
We're all sitting on gold mines, man.
Mm-hmm.
So Mac wanted to know about. Ask James how much of the Warcraft book he wrote and how much Paul Peterson wrote.
It was weird. I didn't really get to see what the other authors were writing because it was sort of a very work for hire, and it was my first gig too. So it was not a case of like I got to pick and choose what I wrote. I wrote in that original turnover, and I think what happened is we wrote that, and then it got sent over to the other studio that was working, and they took that as a starting point and went from there. But I did. There was an adventure that I wrote. I did the Night Elf stuff. I did all of the elf stuff. And several of the prestige classes, a lot of the druid stuff. I think that's about it. So it was an assignment. It was about 20,000 words of like it was about a third or a quarter of the book. So it was not an insignificant amount, but it was interesting too because we got to see a bunch of like the we didn't get to play the game before it came out, but we got to see a lot of Blizzard's, sort of concept art and just their working documents for how all of this stuff would work. And they're like, well, we want a spell that kind of makes this poison mist that freezes or something like that. We're not sure if we're going to do it or not, but kind of mining those design documents for stuff that would make fun tabletop things.
And just from my own personal, you were not at the drunken night of let's destroy 10 for living Greyhawk.
Me?
No. That was James, right? It was Jason, right?
I don't even know. I think I might have come after. Yeah, that's totally.
I was just curious. That was good.
No, yeah, that was.
Eric, are you tired, Eric?
I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, nothing to do with that one. Yes.
That happened after I was.
I thought I'd throw that in there. That's one of the fun things that happened there. Why does it seem that companies shy away from underwater content?
Because the characters that we put into our games can't breathe water. That's the main reason. I think it's also a place that it's so weird that you have. I just watched Avatar: The Way of Water yesterday, and so I'm kind of salty on underwater stuff right now because that movie sucked. But yeah, it was awful. It was awful. It had really cool special effects, but
no plot line.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what do you think, Eric?
I have a theory, and it's a theory that I have anecdotally proven again and again and again, much to my chagrin. D&D and Pathfinder, all these types of games are games that have 500-600 pages worth of rules, and that in and of itself is challenging for a lot of people. But when you set up a campaign or an adventure that as a feature you get to learn about 20 to 100 more pages of rules, almost always fails. Psionics, the people who love it, but most people don't use it. Underwater combat just adds a bunch of more stuff. People don't do it. Aerial combat with all kinds of maneuverability and stuff, most people don't bother. And I think it's just because the cognitive load of a giant rule set is already high enough that if you sort of say, oh, and to get to fight underwater, here's 35 more pages of rules, whether that's true or not. I think that that's a disincentive to most people to play, is that if those rules were in the main book robustly, I think sometimes it's less problematic. But here, learn a second game. Here, learn a second game to play the game that you kind of already don't know how to play. Is not a winning sales message, and I think
that also works against just the inspiration is like Elric and Conan and Fritz Leiber stuff. The games that you want to play with these are based on the stories that you read and were exciting, and there's just not a lot of underwater high fantasy stuff out there because it's so alien to the mindset of just humanity. It's not something that we really can identify with. So underwater stuff really ends up being more in the realm of horror because it's a place where you go to die, not to go have adventures.
Yeah,
drowning in sharks and
I mean, I think it's cool, but I think you're underwater unless you all have helms of underwater action magic items. One dispel magic, and you're all dead.
A lot more people have played. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, once if you have to get these helms of underwater action, and all of this stuff just to go there, then you're kind of not really engaging with the whole excitement. I don't know. It's intriguing me. I love the idea of underwater adventures and stuff like that, but I think it just is a better thing to mine for horror than fantasy.
I suspect many more people have played The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh than have played The Final Enemy, and I'll just leave it at that.
Final Enemy is a difficult adventure to run.
Oh, that's my point.
Yep.
It's runnable, it's difficult, and more than likely it's going to be a party wipe because the Sahagwin have every advantage. The Sharks and the Sahagwin have every advantage in that adventure, and they're nasty to begin with. I agree with that, but that's part of the challenge. Another thing, no one does water things right. Do you ever remember the stupid Jar Jar Binks when at the very beginning of that new movie in the 90s, they go underwater and then they end up in air pocket all of a sudden? Like, what
is
the
that
hell?
The one where they swim through the planet cold?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly, which makes no sense scientifically.
Science.
Such a good movie.
I can't tell when you're serious.
What would gravity be like at the core of a planet? Would that be difficult to fly through in your bomb bat or whatever the hell that little submarine is called?
No, you have a switch.
Oh, okay.
There's a button you push. Underwater, yes, no.
There are rumors Lucas is taking it back from Disney. There's rumors out there that he's going to buy it back because he can't stand what they're doing.
Okay.
I heard that. Yeah, that's.
It turns out that you could drain a dirty dish rag of enough water that I don't care about it anymore.
That's awesome. Very cool. So here's I just lost my. Eric's got my brain all over You got me going here, man. Oh my God, God's overcome. Shit. Oh, okay. You did a Races of the Faerun book.
Yep.
If you had the opportunity, but I'm not talking about 5th edition stuff. Playable races for Greyhawk? Would you, if you did that instead, Races of the Flannis instead of Races of Faerun?
It would have a lot of the same options because the games are so similar, but it would have Greyhawk flavor instead of Forgotten Realms flavor. But I would probably there would be some creatures in there that I would play up, like Grung. I've always had a kind of a soft spot in my heart for Grung. There's the mean, toothy frog people.
Okay.
Lossels are fun.
Lossels are my favorite.
Lossel.
Throwing dung. I had a Lossel throw its dung, critically hit someone and kill them.
Oh,
I would probably also lean in really more deeply into like just the pantheons, the like elf and dwarf pantheons and all that, because that's some fun stuff. Drow, I guess.
One thing
it would be pretty similar. I was saying it'd be pretty similar.
I thought it was a dubious inclusion in the Greyhawk Monstrous Compendium appendix to include the Beastmen, but that's kind of cool. I like Beastmen. That might be kind of a fun beast folk. today.
Smarts.
Maybe Beast Folk.
Parts.
But
there's this category of creatures in the Fiend Folio that are basically mean little people. You know,
Oh yeah,
Naiads and
Sasloy.
Pesties and Barts
Yeah.
and all of those things. I
Germain.
never really got into those
too.
because I just I much preferred the more reptilian creatures. I think
That's very cool.
the Lizard King.
We just ran Tomb of Lizard King. I did an honorarium. That's what I ran for my 1000th.
Wow.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Remember opening that one up and it's like, oh, new adventure. Where's the new monsters? And there's a vampire lizard man in there.
Yeah,
Like,
vampire lizard man. I made him with a much higher spell level capability
Nice.
too. Yeah, so it was fun. We had a good time. So it sounds like everything was a positive for Savage Tide. What would you I know we're winding down here, but what would you recommend for someone who wanted to DM it? Like some tips, like take their time with it. It would be the number one thing I think I'd say is don't run boom, 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 all the way through.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure. Use a lot of the background and supplementary material, particularly in Sasserine and the Isle of Dread. There's a lot of stuff there that you can take your time just exploring and all of that. I would strongly suggest building something memorable, like for the Blue Nixie. If you're playing it at a table, it would be really cool to have that as like a 3D model that you just bring out every time something happens on the Blue Nixie. A tip that I did when I was running Adventure for Call of Cthulhu Beyond the Mountains of Madness is I made this big poster board of all of the NPCs and had their pictures up there. So every time the PCs enter or meet a new NPC, I'd put that up there and make sure that the players saw them and kind of identified the face, the art of the face with the character they're playing on. But I guess the biggest advice is now that it's already out, make sure that you just read the whole thing through at least once to get like an idea of what's going on, because that's not something we had the luxury of knowing in the last volume. We had a basic idea what would be happening. But if you read through as a whole thing, you're going to be better able to foreshadow content and all of that. That's something that we did with Savage Shackled City. With whenever we compile them all up into a big hardcover, we're able to do that. So if you have all the time in the world, kind of rebuilding the entire thing into one big file, it's a great way to prepare for it. But that's a lot of work, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Thanks, Katana, for those links.
One thing that I do want to bring up that was kind of there's this whole element of like us versus them with Wizards of the Coast versus Pies and all of that, and obviously there's a certain element of truth to that. But our original license would have had this ending in like halfway through Savage Tide, and it was really just nice of them to extend our license long enough so that we could finish this adventure path all the way to the end of 150. So that was something when we first found out about it. I think I had a month as editor-in-chief before I realized, well, the adventure path you're working on is getting chopped off in the middle.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that was something that was really, really very much appreciated.
Wow. At least, yeah, that's great to hear that you got it done.
Yeah.
Eric, what about your suggestions? Anything for the Savage Tide or any of the adventure paths?
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of reading through everything, but I would also say that's 12 adventures. That's a lot. That's a lot of reading. That's a lot of prep. The other thing I would say is like try to do that, but don't obsess over it. You'll be fine. Like read 2 or 3 adventures ahead and then skim a lot more, get a sense of how it's supposed to end and everything. If you can't, like, I wouldn't want your inability to read a year's worth of content prior to starting get in the way of starting. You can always just continue to be a few steps ahead. The prep that you do will pay itself back for sure, but don't let that kind of be daunting. Back in the day when we were putting these out, no one had that option, and people were playing them right out of the every month, and they loved it. So don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Just have fun.
That's just good advice for anything.
Yeah.
So an audience question: how many of you have Sasserine as a major city in your campaign now? Just say I do. I'm just curious because I have not even. I've never been down there in my campaign. That's one place. I mean, just haven't. Would love to do something down there, but haven't gotten to it. I'm just curious on that. I know Dale says he's been running it through. I think it's such a fantastic concept that was done brilliantly. El Naval, cool. That's very cool.
One of the things that I had the most fun building Sassuran was just naming all of the little shops and places, and just coming up with fun little titles. Like, I think my favorite shop in the entire city is the boat shop called It Still Floats.
Red Snake Walk. There you go.
Yeah, you can just, in 2 or 3 words, you can just make so much flavor into something. Like, why is this place called It Still Floats? Obviously, because it's a shabby boat store, but it still works. But...
I'm calling your bluff here, though. Okay.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, Bill the Butcher. Dead Rabbit Way. Come on.
This is before that came out, I think.
Yeah.
It might have. When you're naming so many different things, a lot of those names are going to be coming from just towns and street names and stuff when I grew up. One of the villains in that one, that evil taxidermist, is a mashup of Robert Bloch and Norman Bates. His name.
Cool.
Nesmond Bloch.
So. We all do it. Come on. I rip off stuff all the time. So last night, the Drider had a pet named Ubu, and then everyone in chat's going, "Sit Ubu, sit, good dog," sit. Right?
Yeah.
But it was a basilisk. So yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the jokes. You got to have them. So
yep.
All right. What a great discussion. That's just been fun. So I'm going to really put you out on a limb here, Erik.
Oh God.
No, not that bad. Not that bad.
Let's hear it.
The Greyhawk Workshop's a great idea.
Okay.
Give me give me 2 names you'd love to do it with. If we had you two, and of course Anna would be in on it because she'd be here. Who would you love to have?
Names of like locations and characters.
No, names of people that you'd want to participate in it.
Oh, names of real world people.
Real world.
I will. Well, let's get Pluffett Schmedger the Elder.
Gary.
Yeah. Because our Greyhawk's rusty. And, we need like a ringer to be like, actually, he's going to come back in the body of a girl next time.
Okay.
According to chapter 9 of The Eyes Have It or whatever, I would trust that Gary would keep us on task.
Anyone from the old days, the old Cannon Fire, the old Board Day AOLs. I mean, like I could get Roger to participate.
Yeah, find Fred Waning and bring him back to life. I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah,
Cyclops.
Is he alive? Fred?
No one knows. He totally disappeared.
Yeah. I know Roger.
He's the new Carl Sargent.
That's a shame. I know Roger Moore.
Carl Sargent.
Yeah, Carl is. Unfortunately. Hey, we were lucky. You remember that episode where we got Rick Rose on, and
let's get Rick Rose. Let's get Rick Rose involved in the.
That'd be another cool one there. So the one I'm trying to I got to get Doug Niles on stuff too. He did some great stuff.
That's exciting.
Cult of the Reptile God, and
such a good one.
Yeah, and some other. I haven't had him on yet, but I'm dead serious on this. So if we'll talk. It's a great idea, a fantastic idea. Just to brainstorm stuff live, and then have the audience participate and just talk on stuff. So maybe down the end of the summer or something, we'll do one. Because I don't want to take up too much of your Sunday nights, Erik. I know you're going to be moving soon.
That's right. Sooner than you think.
That's cool. You got a signed contract? Are you hiding it?
I'm not going to talk about real estate transactions. No, I don't. It's not a done deal yet.
You're looking still, and moving back home though. That's pretty exciting, isn't it?
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
It's
I can't afford a house in Seattle, so yeah, no one can. So I need more space, so we'll see where we end up.
Curtis, if you can reach out to Doug again, if you got his information, please do it for me. I know you played in his game at GaryCon. I'd love for you to, I've tried there. Yeah, and just being around family and friends. I mean, look at how lucky I've been to be around my friends for 43 years. We've been playing the game for 43 years because most, none of them, one moved away, but that was it. So we've all been around in the area for all that time, and it's just, I'm lucky. And it's only a job, right?
Yeah, I have friends here in Seattle. I just don't have room to have a game in my house because literally everything is covered in books.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Time to.
Fortunately, books are really easy to transport.
Well, they are, but they're still it's a lot. It's a lot of work.
Just put them all into one big refrigerator box, and you'd only have to move one box.
And you don't want them damaged. It's tough. It's.
I got 12 books out of this little hallway back there, and you can't tell the difference. 12 full boxes, and someone to walk in here and go, I can't believe you took anything out of this room, and they'd be right. Wow. This is going to be 50, 60 boxes just for this one room.
Yeah.
God help me.
You're always going to be worried about them getting wherever from point A to point B, man. So yeah, absolutely. All right, what do we want to shout out at Paizo?
Pathfinder Remaster.
Second
edition Pathfinder Remaster coming out in November. We're working on the files for the player core and the GM core, basically a revision of the rules, essentially a glorified errata that fixes a couple of issues, but also largely just purges the remnants of Dungeons and Dragons brand out of Pathfinder, since we'll be shifting away from the open game license that lets us use that. And frankly, we're a lot less nostalgic these days than we used to be, particularly from that vector. So that's all happening right now. It's giving us an opportunity to make the game even easier to learn and more accessible, but it's still fundamentally the same Pathfinder 2nd Edition that everybody is really coming to appreciate. So I'm excited about that. And then, James, what do you got coming up? You got something big coming up.
Yeah. Turns out been doing Pathfinder Adventure Path for 200 months. So we've got Pathfinder 200 coming out next March, which will be 200 pages, hardcover. It's super nostalgic sequel, basically, to Burnt Offerings that I wrote. It's the longest published adventure I've ever done.
Wow.
The biggest assignment is bigger than what I did with the Sandy Peterson Pathfinder Cthulhu Mythos book. Almost twice the size of what I did for Red Handed Doom. So it's pretty exciting. Just exciting and nostalgic and kind of overwhelming that's coming out. That there's been Pathfinder has had 50 more volumes published than Dungeon magazine ever had published.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's a fitting anniversary too, because you showed the cover of 150 not too long ago. Pathfinder #1 came out the next month after that volume. So technically, Rise of the Runelords #1 was essentially Savage Tide #13, and now we're 200 months from then. So, or will be in March of 2024.
It's a great accomplishment. Great accomplishment. Keeping things rolling.
Yep.
Yeah, it's impressive, and everyone out there wishes you just keep on rolling with it. How was PaizoCon anyway? That just happened, right? It
was great. Yeah, it was a little bit different. Last couple of years have been fully online. So, well, actually, this last year was fully online. Last year we had a hybrid show, but it's different. But it's pretty cool. Lots of still panels, lots of gaming online. Maybe one day we'll get back to doing it in person, but for now, this way everybody gets to participate, no matter where you live, and it's sort of democratized PaizoCon. So pretty fun.
And that's good because it's the same way with the virtual GragCon. I'll talk about that in a second. It's just there's a place for in person, GaryCon or ReaperCon or Gen Con, and there's a place for virtual, and there's a place for a little bit of a mix. Keep everyone. You want to keep the community has to stay involved. Hey, what happens if this community, this Greyhawk community, falls apart?
It's impossible.
Well, you understand what I'm saying.
Will never happen.
Maybe there's another chat demon incident.
We
Who
could
knows?
survive the post from the ashes pre Greyhawk 98 interregnum.
Yeah.
If we could survive the Puppets, Flames of the Falcon, Child's Play era, then this campaign setting will be
We had
fun.
Border Watch at least.
Oh my gosh, yes. And Patriots of Ulick, Border Watch, all that. Yeah.
Patriots of Ulick. Don't forget Patriots of Ulick.
Yeah.
And all right, so here's a little quick sidebar here, Eric.
Yes, sir.
Puppets was the penultimate achievement of the fundraiser. So much so that Luke wants me to run it at Gary Con next year. Puppets.
He wants you to run the actual same adventure.
Yes. Puppets and then some. Yeah, he wants me to run that at Gary Con next year because it was highly entertaining. So, what am I going to do for next year's fundraiser? This is a little bit of a spoof, but I'm going to do the Bizarro Greyhawk instead of Child's Play, where Vampire Thrommel runs the world, and the gnome, with his sidekick, the gnome Bigby.
Okay.
Because they made Bigby a gnome, right?
What?
Oh,
you guys don't know that yet. They made Bigby.
No.
Why? Okay, two questions.
Yes, they made Bigby.
One, why would I give a shit? But two, what?
Yes, Bigby's a gnome now. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, dude, that's freaking ridiculous. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I even called out a couple of them, and they didn't respond. But yeah,
they don't care about that.
They don't. They don't, obviously. But I'm kidding. But it's just like the bizarre world.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Like
you're absolutely correct.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Gnome, yes. That's why the gnome jokes go on all the time in chat now. Is because of the gnome big. Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. So here's what's coming up, and then we'll do some giveaways. And we're gonna raid into Darling because she's on. We'll raid into her. She played last night. So I have 2 streams before I go on vacation. Greyhawk Mike, Oblivion Seeker Les will be joining us, and myself utilizing artifacts in Greyhawk. So we did an artifact one like number 50 in Legends and Lore. Mike's idea is how can you use them in your campaign, whether they're Greyhawk based or not. So we're going to talk about that, and that'll be on Wednesday nights. Legends of Lore, Anna free as well because Anna's will be in Sweden, and then we will finish. Whoops, I went out of order there. Sorry about that because that sign up starts soon. Well, Adventure 1002, Corrupted of the Gnarly. The Narwhal Headhunters are up there now, and a lot of this, Eric and James, is based off of Rob Kuntz's Dark Druids publications.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
And it's really cool. So one of them is a Zugtamoy worshiper now.
Yay!
That's cool. I just had a great idea for our. I used the younger adventure path that we're going to be brainstorming. I think it'd be really cool if we made Ayuz a Goliath or a Dragonborn.
No, you know how much trouble I get in from the community from the fundraiser 2 years ago with the Dragonborn I put in there. Troy will not let me live that down to this day.
I think a Dragonborn Ayuz would be a little tougher to dispatch from the princess's point of view. So I'm all for it.
Oh my gosh, I will. Yeah, Ben Eric. There we go. Yes, it's for the children at Lord Gazelle. Don't, Troy. Yeah. Hey, we need to surpass $25,500 next year somehow. So I got to figure out how we're gonna do that. No, Sam, we're not going there. We're not going to go there on that. So after this Thursday night, everyone, I am off until 2 weeks from tonight. Family vacation. Okay.
Nice. Well earned, sir.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, October 6th through the 8th. Is Virtual GreyhawkCon 4. All right? Virtual GreyhawkCon 4. That Sunday night, Eric, please, if you're available, that Sunday, October, the Ask the Experts finale.
Okay.
I will have the Grand Joust again on Saturday nights, and it's a tradition now. It's been going great. We'll have all these other streams. We'll have all these events for everyone to sign up for. The sign-up start, and the link should be here on June 30th. You can start signing up for the con and putting in events All right, there's the tabletop events. It's not active yet, but June 30th is starting for that weekend of October 6th through the 8th. Can't sign up for the events yet, but you can put in events and you can register for the con. So I will be working on the schedule for all the streamers. The streaming community is very strong. We got a lot of great streamers that are working with us, and that's enough of me babbling for tonight. How's that sound? Thank you, Erik. Thank you so very much. James.
The only thanks that I'll accept is one of these days you got to run us through Child's Play now.
Yeah, I was joking about. I was seriously.
We
joking.
did gargoyles. We did puppets.
Yeah.
You got to go for 3. You got to do the trilogy.
Yeah. I'm not. The Bizarro Greyhawk was a joke. So yeah, I will probably run Child's Play for the fundraiser next year.
Awesome.
Child's Play and then some.
Yay.
Child's Play on steroids, whatever it is. Yeah.
And then the next year, it's time for Doom Grinder, right?
Yeah. By that time,
No.
yeah. Well, by that time, I'm hoping that my Doom Grinder rewrite is complete, and then it'll make some sense. But yeah, absolutely.
Nice, excellent.
We need.
I can't wait.
We're trying to get some even bigger names in there in like the Hollywooders, just to get them in. The money that was getting thrown around at GaryCon during that fundraiser that they did was insane. I mean, Gary Gygax's shoe that went for what, $5,500 to Joe Manganiello for a year, and he has to give it back after a year. So yeah, he gets to hold it for a year. But they raised over 50. Everyone raised over 50. Yeah, the cobbler.
You just gotta invite more rich people to watch the stream.
Well, that's rich people are
Hollywood
bored.
stars.
But just I got to figure out how to raise even more money next year. So ideas from everyone. All right, here's the giveaway. Phoenix is right now. If you wanted to rate them, Lee, I already promised Darling from last night that I'd rate into her because she was hysterical again last night playing Rosie. Her and Eric Menge's character, Eric Menge's Halfling Guardian, they just held hands the entire adventure. It was hysterical. They were just walking around holding hands. Yeah. So Dr. Doom Grinder. Last call. $25 gift certificate to Troller Games, one of our great sponsors, and I'm writing the City of Altamira box set for them. So look, one of my campaign cities will be eventually get published. So I'm excited about it. Yep. Here we go. Let's see who wins this, and then we will raid in the Darling. And thank you all so very much for a great week. By the way, Ed says hi to everyone too. Ed and James Jacob, James and Eric Boyd last night was great too. He was fantastic. Here we go. The winner tonight is 25. Gabriel, I'll get it over to you for $25 gift certificate to Troller Games. All right, I have the code. I will get it to you. Okay, so you got it. Let's raid into Darling. Thank you both. Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Set a date sometime up in a couple months or whatever. You guys are free, and we'll do some brainstorming. That's a great idea. So I hit a wrong button. Shit, it's no big deal. There we go. Right there. Now. All right. Yeah, awesome discussion on the Savage Side. I mean, I learned stuff I never knew. By the way, I looked.
Memory lane.
Yeah, it wasn't Lavinia. I got Lavinia and Lavashti mixed up from. It was Lavashti was the demon.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that was my bad on that one. So.
Oh no, I mean it's. I do it myself. I had 3 Kazavans in Pathfinder for a while. So.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll see you Wednesday night. Awesome. That was cool. Just make sure the raid went in. Good. All right, cool.